If a particle's position is given by the expression x of t is equal to 3.4 t cubed minus 5.4 t meters, what is the acceleration of the particle after 5 seconds? For this problem, we are looking for the instantaneous acceleration when the value of t or time is equal to 5 seconds. And here we have an equation for the instantaneous distance, which is here we have 3.4 t cubed minus 5.4 t. And from our differential calculus, we know that getting the derivative of x with respect to t, here we have the velocity, and getting the derivative of the velocity with respect to time, that is our acceleration. Or we can also say that the derivative of v, or the derivative of what? The second derivative of x with respect to time, that is d squared x all over dt squared. This one is the second derivative of the distance traveled with respect to time, and here we have the acceleration. So to get the acceleration when the value of t is equal to 5 seconds, let's say after 5 seconds we will get the second derivative of the given equation. Here we have x of t is equal to 3.4 t cubed, or we have dx over dt is equal to 3.4 times 3. We have t raised to 3 minus 1, or that is equal to 2 minus 5.4. And getting the second derivative of x with respect to t, this one will become 3.4 times 3 times 2, then we have t, then that is minus 0. The derivative of a constant is equal to 0. Now this is our a of t. Okay, now to get the instantaneous value of acceleration after 5 seconds, let's just replace t by 5, substitute 5 to our t. We have 3.4 times 3 times 2 times 5. The result is have 102 meter per second squared. This is our final answer for the acceleration after 5 seconds. An automobile moving at a constant velocity is 15 meter per second passes a gasoline station. 2 seconds later, another automobile leaves the gasoline station and accelerates at a constant rate of 2 meter per second squared. How soon will the second automobile overtake the first? Now for this problem, assuming this is our first automobile with the speed of we have the speed of this automobile is equal to 15 meter per second, and 2 seconds after passing a gasoline station, a second car also accelerates with a constant rate of 2 meter per seconds. And since he started here at the gasoline station, the initial velocity here is equal to 0. And we know that from the problem, the first car is ahead from the second car by 2 seconds. Okay, and at some point, let's say at some point here, their distances are equal. Let's say S sub 1 and S sub 2, wherein at this point S sub 1 is equal to S sub 2. Now from the problem, how soon will this second car or second automobile overtake the first automobile? Okay, now from the problem statement, we know that the first car is having a constant velocity of 15 meters per second. Now, for the constant velocity, we have a formula that is, let's say, initially from S is equal to 1/2 of the initial velocity plus a certain velocity at that given time. Since the velocity of the first automobile is constant, we can say that the initial velocity is equal to its instantaneous velocity at certain time. Therefore, this one is equal to 2v times t. Then we can see that for constant speed, we have this formula, S is equal to Vt. Let's say this one is for S1, and this is the velocity of the first automobile and the time of the first automobile. Again, here we need another equation so that we can relate the first automobile to the second automobile. Maybe we can use their time. We know that the time of the first automobile is what? The time of the second automobile. Since the first automobile is ahead from the second automobile by 2 seconds, this is plus 2 seconds. Now, if we try to substitute t sub 1 to s sub 1, we have here s sub 1 is equal to v sub 1 times t sub 2 plus 2, or the distance traveled by the first automobile is v sub 1 t sub 2 plus 2 v sub 1. Okay, but again, we know that the speed of the first automobile is 15 meters per second. Therefore, let's say s sub 1 is equal to 15 t sub 2 plus 2 times v sub 1. The velocity of the first automobile is 15. Therefore, this is 2 times 15. For our first equation, we have 15 t squared plus 30. Let's say this will be our equation 1. Now, for the second equation, here we have two unknowns, s sub 1 and t sub 2. Therefore, we need another equation to solve the problem. From the second automobile, let's say using this kinematic equation, we have S is equal to VOT plus 1/2 AT squared. Okay. Now, let's say this is our second automobile. Let's say this is S sub 2. The initial velocity of the second car, t sub 2 plus 1/2 acceleration of the second car, t sub 2 squared. Now, for the second car, since we know that the moment after 2 seconds the first car passes the gasoline station, the second car accelerates. Therefore, we can say that v sub o, or the initial velocity of the second car, is equal to 0. Therefore, this one is s sub 2 is equal to 0 times t sub 2 plus 1/2, and the acceleration of the second car is given from the problem with 2 and t sub 2 squared. Now, for s sub 2, for our second equation, we have here, this one will cancel out. Therefore, our s sub 2 is equal to t sub 2 squared. This will be our second equation. And from our working equation, which is this one, from the moment the second automobile will overtake the first car, using this equation, s sub 1 is equal to s sub 2, we can substitute our two equations here. We have 15 t sub 2 plus 30 is equal to t sub 2 squared. Or, let's simplify this, t sub 2 squared minus 15 t squared minus 30 is equal to 0. Now, by using our quadratic formula, we can get two values for t, or in our two values for t sub 2, we have here 16.79 seconds, and the second value is negative 1.79 seconds. Here, since there is no negative time, our final answer will be this one, 16.79 seconds. That is the moment when their distance are equal, meaning ahead from 16.79 seconds, let's say 16.8 seconds, the second automobile now overtake the first automobile. Okay. A thief escapes and boarded on a truck and traveled at a constant speed of 55 km per hour. 2 hours later, after the truck left, a policeman riding on a motorbike pursued the fugitive at a constant speed of 80 km per hour. How long did the criminal travel when the policeman catch up him? Okay, again here we have the condition wherein the thief is ahead from the policeman by a certain time. Then after a certain time again, the police now catch up with the criminal. Okay. Now from the initial problem again, since the thief have a constant speed, therefore we will be using this formula for constant speed. We have S is equal to Vt. Okay. Now again here we know that let's say this will be for the thief, let's say S sub 1 for the thief, then the velocity of the thief, and T sub 1. Again, we need here another condition so that we can relate the speed or the time of the thief to the policeman. Here we know that the time of the thief is equal to the time of the policeman, and since the thief is ahead to the policeman by 2 hours, this one is plus 2. Then let's replace again T sub 1 to our equation here from S sub 1. Therefore we can say that S sub 1 is equal to V sub 1 times T sub 2 plus 2, and we know that the truck is traveling at a speed of 55 km per hour. Therefore this one is 55, then T sub 2 plus 2, then simplify this one, we have 55 T sub 2 plus 110. This will be our first equation again. Now for the second equation, policeman riding on a motorbike pursued the fugitive at a constant speed 2. Therefore we will also use this equation for the policeman. Let's say S sub 2 is equal to V sub 2 T sub 2, and for S sub 2 we have here the velocity of the motorbike is 80 km per hour, and we do not know the time. Okay, that is T sub 2. Here let's say this will be our second equation. Now from the condition, at what time or how long did the criminal travel when the policeman catch up to him, we need a value of T so that we can substitute it here to S sub 1. Now to get the value of T, we have here a condition again, the time when the criminal catch up to the policeman catch up to the criminal. We can say that the distance traveled by criminal is now also equal to the distance traveled by the policeman, or their distances at a certain point they are equal. Okay, now for S sub 1 is equal to S sub 2, we can now substitute it. We have 55 T sub 2 plus 110 is equal to 80 T sub 2. Then we have here 80 T sub 2 minus 50 T sub 2 is equal to 110. Then we have 30 T sub 2 is equal to 110. Solving for T sub 2, T sub 2 is 110 all over 30, or in decimal, this one is 4.4 hours. Okay, then for how long did the criminal travel? Getting the time for the criminal, let's say T sub 1 is equal to the time of the policeman traveling, 4.4 hours plus the time of the criminal, that is equal to 2. Therefore, the total time here is 6.4 hours. Okay, this will be the time for the criminal traveling. A policeman aimed his rifle at the bullseye of a target 50 meters away. If the speed of the bullet is 500 meters per second, how far below the bullseye does the bullet strikes the target? Let's say this is our bullseye. This is the bullseye, or not the bullseye, the target. Let's say here is the location of the target. Okay, and this is the bullseye, and the bullet leaves the gun at this point. Okay, now the bullet is traveling to the right with a distance of 50 meters away to the target. Let's say the distance here is 50 meters, and this bullet again is traveling to the right to hit the target. Okay, now from the problem, the speed of the bullet, let's say the speed of the bullet is equal to 500 meters per second. That is his speed, or that is the speed of the bullet along x-axis, traveling along x-axis. How far below the bullseye does the bullet strikes the target? Meaning to say, when the bullet is traveling, there is some point that it is losing his distance to the target. Therefore, tendency for the bullet is what? Due to opposing force, which is the air resistance, the bullet did not hit the target. Let's say the bullet hit at this portion of the target. Okay, or the bullet did not hit the bullseye, instead it falls below the bullseye. Now for our problem, we need to find the distance of the bullet where it falls to the bullseye. Therefore, we need to get this distance, let's say y distance. Okay, now to solve this problem, first we need to find the time when the bullet reaches this point, which is 50 meters away. Now to get that one, since the bullet is traveling with a speed of 500 meters per second, and with the formula at constant speed again, we have let's say instead of s, we'll be using x is equal to the initial velocity times the time, and solving for the time when the bullet reaches this distance, distance from the target, that is t is equal to x all over the initial velocity of the bullet. Therefore, this one, x is 50, while the velocity of the bullet is 500. Therefore, our time here will be 0.1 second. That is the time when the bullet reaches the part of the target. Now, since the bullet is going downward, meaning it is traveling downward at this point, therefore we will be using our free falling body or object in motion, which is y is equal to the velocity along y-axis times the time plus 1/2. Its acceleration will be the acceleration due to gravity, and we will be using positive g because it is with the gravity g. Then we have t squared. Now we know that the velocity of the bullet from this point, since it is traveling downward, the initial velocity of the bullet when it is traveling downward is what? Equal to 0. Therefore, for our y, getting our y here, y is equal to 0 times 0.1 plus 1/2. The gravity is 9.81, and for the time, that is 0.1 square. Solving for the value of y, the value of y here is, this one is equal to 0. We have 0.05 meters, or we can also say that this one is also equal to 5 centimeters. Okay, this will be our answer, meaning 5 centimeter is the distance of the bullet where it hits the target. Okay, or 5 centimeter below the bullseye, that is where the bullet hit the target. Okay, which is, this is our target. This is our target. Okay. A man driving his car at a constant speed of 42 miles per hour suddenly sees a cow crossing the road 60 feet ahead. At what constant deceleration in feet per second squared is required to avoid hitting the animal? Assume a reaction time of 0.3 seconds before the man applies the brake. Again, for this problem, let's say here there is a car traveling with a constant speed of 42 miles per hour, and at some point during his driving, at some point 60 meters or 60 feet ahead of him, he saw a cow crossing the road. Let's say the distance here is 60 feet. At some point he saw a cow crossing the road 60 feet away. Okay. Now, for the driver to avoid hitting the animal, he should stop. Therefore, he needs to decelerate. Now, for this problem, assuming a reaction time of 0.3 seconds, meaning after the time 60 feet away, he saw the cow. After 0.3 seconds, that is the time where he hit the brakes. Let's say at this point, hit the brakes after t is equal to 0.3 seconds, meaning to say from this point up to this point, this is his braking distance. Okay, let's say this is the braking distance. Now for the problem, we need to find the acceleration or the deceleration of the driver, the constant deceleration of the driver or the car. Let's say again, initially solve this problem, we need to get the distance or the braking distance of the car. And again, since he's braking, we know the final velocity at this point for the driver to avoid hitting the animal. His velocity here is equal to 0. Okay, and this is the time when he starts. This is the time here when he starts hitting the brake because of the reaction time. Okay, now before getting the braking distance, we should get first how far did he travel from this point to this point after 0.3 seconds. Now, since the problem has a constant speed again, or the driver is traveling, or the car is traveling at a constant speed, using the formula for the constant speed, again, let's say x, or the distance traveled along the x-axis, that is vt. Okay, then solving for the value of x, distance traveled from this point to this point, the velocity is 42. Or wait, before we apply the values, let's first convert our speed. For this speed, that is 42 miles per hour. We know that in 1 mile there is 1,609 meters, and for every 1 meter there is 3.2808 feet. Okay, and then converting r to seconds, for every r there is 300 or 3,600 seconds. Okay, then r will cancel out. We have here feet, also no, not feet, meter will cancel out, mile will also cancel out. Therefore, getting the value here, the total value here, we have 61.59 feet per second. That is the speed of the car. Therefore, we can now get for x, or the distance traveled by the car during his reaction time of 0.3 seconds. Therefore, x is equal to 61.59 times the time is again 0.3 seconds. Therefore, our total distance traveled here, we have 18.48 feet. Meaning to say, from this point to this point, the car traveled 18.48 feet. Therefore, the braking distance will be 60 feet minus 18.48 feet. Now, to get for the deceleration, we have, based from our values, we have here the distance traveled, we have the final velocity, we do not have time. Therefore, for our equation or for our formula, we will not be using time there. Then we have the velocity, okay, which is 61.59 feet per second. From our kinematic equation, we have there a formula wherein the square of the final velocity is equal to the square of the initial velocity plus 2a times the distance traveled. Now, from this point, we know that the final velocity is equal to 0. Therefore, we can substitute here to 0. Then, next, the initial velocity is 61.59. Square that one plus twice of the acceleration. Here we are looking for the value of the acceleration, and for the distance traveled during this point up to this point, or our braking distance will be let's say x braking distance. X braking distance will be 60 minus 18.48. Solving for the value of a, since at the end of this point is equal to 0, and since the problem is looking for deceleration, our answer here should be negative. Negative denotes that the car is slowing down. Okay, therefore here we have negative of 61.59 square all over 2 times 60 minus 18.48. Therefore, getting the value here, we have negative 45.7 feet per second squared. Okay, that is our constant deceleration for the car to avoid hitting the animal or the cow. A ball is thrown vertically into the air at 120 meters per second. After 3 seconds, another ball is thrown vertically. What velocity must the second ball have to pass the first ball at 100 meters from the ground? Okay, again, before we solve that problem, let's first determine the distance traveled by ball 1 after 3 seconds so that we can draw whether the ball is having both of them traveling vertically or the other one is downward and the ball 2 or the second ball is upward. To explain that one, let's first get the distance traveled of the first ball after 3 seconds using our kinematic equation, that is y is equal to VOT, initial velocity, times the time. Then here I will be using negative because here we are traveling upward, minus 1/2 gt square. Okay, now for the initial velocity of the ball 1, the initial velocity of ball 1 is equal to 120 meters per second and it is traveling for 3 seconds. Okay, getting for the value of y is equal to the initial velocity 120 times the time minus times 3 minus 1/2, then you multiply this one to the gravity 9.81 meter per second squared times again the time 3 square. And solving for our y, or the height, for the height of ball 1 traveling after 3 seconds, the value of y is equal to 315.86 meters. From here, we can see that ball 1, after 3 seconds, the height of ball 1 is greater than 100 meters. Therefore, we can conclude that during the time the two balls meet, the first ball is traveling downward and the second ball is traveling upward. Therefore, let me draw this problem. Let's say this is our first ball. This is the ball traveling upward, then certain point reaches a maximum height, then it falls downward. Then this is my second ball. Okay, then it is traveling upward. Then at a certain point, they meet each other, or their height are the same, wherein that height is at the value of y is equal to 100 meter. Okay, let's say this is our second height and this is our first height. Okay, this first height is the maximum height attained by the ball 1. Okay, now to get our h sub 1, height 1, or let's say that is our y sub 1, getting the maximum height, that is, let's say, h sub 1. We know that at the maximum point again here, our final velocity is equal to 0. Then using again our kinematic equation, y is equal to v of t minus we do not have a time, therefore we'll not be using this formula. Instead, what I will be using is this formula. The final velocity square is equal to the initial velocity square. Then again, this one is minus because we are traveling upward, minus 2 times the gravity and the y. Let's say here is the maximum y. Okay, if vf here is equal to 0, okay, because at the maximum point the final velocity is equal to 0, then substituting the values, we have 0 is equal to the initial velocity, we have 120 square minus 2 times the gravity again, 9.81. Then we are looking for the value of the maximum height. Getting our maximum height, that is equal to 120 square all over 2 times 9.81. Our height here, the maximum height attained by ball 1 is 734 meters. Okay, now traveling 734 meters, how long did the ball 1 reach that height? Okay, now we're looking for the value of t to get for the maximum time, or the time when the ball reaches its maximum height. We will use again our kinematic equation, wherein vf is equal to the initial velocity minus g times the time. Okay, and again, at the maximum height here, the final velocity is equal to 0, therefore this one is equal to 0, and the initial velocity 120 minus 9.81 times t. Solving for the value of t is equal to 120 all over 9.81, or the time when the ball reaches its maximum height is equal to 12.23 seconds. Okay, that is for, let's say, if this one is h sub 1, let's say this one will be t sub 1. Next, when the ball is traveling downward, we do not know our h sub 2, but we can get our h sub 2 since we know that this one is 100 meters, this one is 100 meters, and the total height traveled by ball 1 is 734 meters. We can get h sub 2. We can say that h sub 2 is equal to the maximum height time minus 100, or 734 minus 100. This one will be equal to 634 meters for h sub 2. Now for h sub 2, we need to get the time when the ball travels from this point up to this point, so that we can get the total time of the ball 1 traveling to the highest point and going downward to this point. Okay, therefore using again our formula, y is equal to initial velocity times the time. Then instead of using negative, this will become positive because we are traveling downward, minus 1/2 gt square, wherein we are looking for the value of t. Again, our final velocity here is equal to 0, and when the ball is traveling downward, its initial velocity will become equal to 0. Therefore, we have here y, let's say y sub 2 or h sub 2, let's say which is equal to h sub 2, is equal to the initial velocity 0, then we do not know time, plus 1/2, and the gravity is 9.81 times for the time. Again, we do not know the value of time. Let's say this one is t sub 2. We are looking for the time when the ball travels from this point up to this point. Okay, therefore again our h sub 2 here is equal to 634. Therefore we have here 634 is equal to 1/2 times 9.81 times t sub 2 square. Solving for t sub 2 square is equal to 634 times 2. We divided to 9.89 and getting the square root of both sides. We have here t sub 2 is equal to 11.37 seconds. Therefore, the total time, let's say t total, that is equal to t sub 1 plus t sub 2. The total time for the ball to travel from this point to the maximum point and from maximum point to this point, we have the total time is equal to 23.6 seconds. Now for T3, that is the time needed by the second ball to reach 100 meter. Let's say from this point to this point, we need to get what is T3. We can get T3 since after the ball is thrown, 3 seconds after, another ball is thrown vertically upward. Therefore, the time when the two ball meets at 100 meter, the second ball is traveling by how many seconds? T3 will be the total time for the ball 1 traveling minus 3 seconds. Therefore, this will become 20.6 seconds. Okay, meaning ball 1 is thrown upward. Then after 3 seconds, this ball is thrown upward. Then at a certain time, or at a certain height wherein this one is 100 meter, they meet each other. Therefore, deducting 3 to the time traveled by the ball 1, that is during the ball 2 is being thrown upward, that is the total time wherein the ball 1 is traveling. Okay, now we need here the velocity or the initial velocity of the ball 2. What is the initial velocity of the ball 2? Now to get the initial velocity of the ball 2, since we have the height where it traveled, which is equal to 100 meters, and the time it is traveling, solving for the initial velocity of ball 2, we can use again our kinematic equation, V of t. Then again, this one is minus because ball 2 is traveling upward, gt squared. Therefore, y is 100 meter. Then getting for the initial velocity, minus 1/2. Then we have here 9.81 and t squared. But the value of t is equal to 20.6. Therefore, let me replace it again. The initial velocity 20.6 minus 1/2 times 9.81 times 20.6 square. Okay, that's solving for the initial velocity, v sub o. We have 20.6. This one is equal to 100 plus 1/2 of 9.81 times 20.6 square. And if we divide both sides of the equation by 20.6, we can get our initial velocity for the second ball be equal to 105.89 meter per second. Okay, this will be our answer for this problem. A ball is thrown vertically upward from the ground, and a student gazing out of the window sees it moving upward past him 5 meters per second. The window is 10 meters above the ground. How high does the ball go above the ground? Okay, assuming here we have a building. Say this is your building, and there's a window here wherein a boy is gazing. Say there's a boy here gazing, and the height of the window is what? From the ground. This is our ground. Okay, this one is equal to 10 meters. Now the boy is gazing out of the window, and he saw a ball again. There's a ball here traveling upward with a velocity at this point. The velocity is equal to 5 meters per second. Okay, now the problem is looking for how far did the ball travel from the ground. To get this, again, we know that at maximum height, when the ball travels upward, maximum height, the final velocity of the ball here is equal to 0. Therefore, we can use again our kinematic equation. We do not have time. Therefore, we will be using this kinematic equation. Vf is squared is equal to the initial velocity square minus. We will be using minus because again, we're traveling upward. We are against gravity. F2 gy. Okay, then since our final velocity at the maximum height when the ball is traveling is equal to 0, this one will be equal to 0 is equal to the initial velocity of the ball, that is 5 square minus 2 minus 9.81, and now we're looking for the value of y. Okay, this will be the y. Say this is our y. Solving for the value of y is equal to 5 square all over 2 times 9.81. The height traveled by the ball from this point have 1.27 meters, but here we are looking for the height the ball traveled from the ground. Since this one is 10 meters, since the height of the window is 10 meters, and the boy saw the ball at a height of 10 meters, therefore the ball traveled from the ground by what? Let's say here the height from the ground, let's say h, or h here is y plus 10, or 1.27 plus 10 is equal to 11.27, or let's say this one is 11.3 meters. Okay, this is the total height traveled by the ball from the ground. A man dropped a stone into a well. 4 seconds later, the sound of water splash is heard. Assuming sound travels at a speed of 330 meters per second, determine how deep is the well. Well, solving this problem again, we have here, let's say there is a well. We have here a well, and from the bottom of this well there is water. There's water here, okay, and a stone is being dropped by a man. Let's say there's a man here at the top. There's a man here at the top. Okay, assuming that is a man with 3 arms and 3 legs. And this man drops a stone. Let's say he drops the stone into the well. Okay, and dropping the stone into the well, 4 seconds later, the man heard the splash of the water 4 seconds later. Okay, meaning there is this time where the stone traveled downward. Let's say this will be our T sub 1, and when the stone traveled upward, let's say this is our T sub 2. T sub 1 is when the stone traveled downward, and T sub 2 is when the stone traveled, or the sound of the stone traveled upward. Okay, the sound of the water splash traveled upward. Okay, now we need here a relationship for the time when the stone traveled downward and when you hear the splash of the water at the top of the well. Okay, let's say here initially we have the initial velocity of the stone here, which is equal to 0, and the speed of sound, let's say Vs, the speed of the sound when it traveled upward, is equal to 330 meters per second. Okay, now for the initial condition when the stone traveled downward, let's say using the kinematic equation, we have y is equal to VOT plus t, let's say t sub 1 here, plus 1/2 g t sub 1 square. And since the initial velocity of the stone at the top is equal to 0, we can say that the y it traveled, say this is the y, the stone traveled, we have 0 t sub 1 plus 1/2 g t sub 1 squared. Therefore we have y is equal to 1/2 times 9.81 t sub 1 squared, wherein we do not know the value of y and t sub 1. Okay, let's say this will be our equation 1. Now for the equation 2, since the sound is traveling upward with a constant velocity of 330 meters per second, we'll be using our kinematic equation at constant velocity. Let's say y is equal to VOT. Okay, wherein the velocity of the water splash, or when the stone hits the water splash, we have here 330, and this one will be t sub 2. Okay, let's say this will be our equation 2, and to correlate these two equations, we need another equation, because here we have three unknowns. We have y, t sub 1, and t sub 2. Therefore, we need another equation to correlate the two. Again, from the problem says that after 4 seconds later, the sound of the water splash is heard. 4 seconds is when the time the stone is being dropped and when the man heard the splash from the bottom. Okay, therefore here we have t sub 1 when the stone is traveling downward, and t sub 2 when the splash of the water is heard by the man, which is equal to total of 4 hours. Now let's say here, getting our third equation, we have t sub 2 is equal to 4 t sub 1. Say this will be our third equation. Let's substitute, or let's use our equation 2 and 3. Equation 2 and 3. Using equation 2 and 3, we have y is equal to 330. We have 4 minus t sub 1. Therefore, we have here y is equal to 330 times 4 minus 330 t sub 1. Now here, we have here the height where the stone is dropped and the height where the sound traveled upward is what? They are equal. Therefore, we can equate the two, meaning using the equation 1, and let's say this will be our new equation. equation 4. Using equation 1 and equation 4, we have here y is equal to y, therefore we have 1/2 of 9.81 t sub 1 square is equal to 330 times 4 minus 330 t sub 1. Okay, now getting the value of t sub 1, let's arrange this one. 1/2 of 9.81 is 4.905. Let's say this is 4.905 t sub 1 square plus 330 t sub 1 minus 4 times 330 is equal to 1320. 1320, quit this one is equal to 0. Then by using our quadratic formula, we can get our t sub 1 be equal to 3.79 seconds, and another value of t sub 1 is equal to negative 71.04 seconds. Of course, we will be using the positive value of t because we don't have a negative value of time. Okay, therefore our t sub 2 here, which is equal to 4 minus t sub 1, this one is equal to 4 minus 3.79. This one is the time where the sound traveled from a given height y. T sub 2 is equal to 0.21 seconds. Now to get for the height of the sound when it traveled, we will not be using the equation 2 because here the one that is traveling for the equation 2 is the sound. Therefore, we will be using equation 1 to solve the problem. We have here y is equal to 1/2 9.81 times t sub 1 square, wherein the value of t sub 1 here 9.81, t sub 1 is 3.79 square. The height or the height of the well, which is equal to y, is equal to 70.5 meters. Okay, so this will be our final answer. In the Daytona 500 auto race, a Ford Thunderbird and a Mercedes-Benz are moving side by side down a straightway at 71.5 meters per second. The driver of the Thunderbird realizes that she must make a pit stop, and she smoothly slows to a stop over a distance of 350 meters. She spends 5 seconds in the pit and then accelerates out, reaching her previous speed of 71.5 meters per second. After a distance of 250 meters, at this point, how far has the Thunderbird fallen behind the Mercedes-Benz, which has continued at a constant speed? Now let's draw. Let's make a drawing on or between these two, the Thunderbird and the Mercedes-Benz. Let's say they are wheel to wheel. Let's say this is the Mercedes-Benz and this is the Thunderbird. Now, at some distance, let's say here, the Thunderbird, the driver of the Thunderbird, realizes that he needs to stop at the pit. Let's say this is the point at the pit. Okay, we're in the distance. At a certain distance, here is what? From the pit, the distance is 350 meters. And after the Thunderbird stops from the pit, he stays here longer by another 5 seconds. Then after 5 seconds, he accelerates again. He accelerates by 250 meters, wherein after 250 meters, he reaches his speed again here, which is equal to 71.5 meters. Okay, let's see. Okay, 350. Okay, now for this problem, the speed of the Thunderbird and the Mercedes at this point, the speed of both of them, let's say 71.5 meters per second. The Thunderbird stops from the pit and then accelerates, reaching 71.5 meters after 250 meters. But the Mercedes-Benz continue moving and did not stop from the pit. Let's say this is the motion. Okay. Now here, to get how far has the Thunderbird fallen behind the Mercedes-Benz, first is we need to get the total time it took for the Thunderbird to reach from pit, stayed from the pit, and from the pit accelerate, reaching 71.5 meter after 250 meters. And after that, from that total time, we will get the distance traveled by the Mercedes-Benz traveled after the total time it took for the Thunderbird to reach from this point up to this point. Okay, now to solve the problem, let's try first getting, say, the Thunderbird reaches the pit, therefore the maximum or the final velocity of the Thunderbird here, since it needs to stop, is equal to 0. Okay, ngayon, to stop from pit, Thunderbird to stop from pit, okay, we will use our kinematic equation, that is Pf squared is equal to initial velocity squared plus 2ax. Okay, now we know that the initial velocity of the Thunderbird is equal to 71.5 meters and the final velocity of the Thunderbird is equal to 0. Okay, and for the distance traveled, that is 350 meters, therefore this will become 0, and we have 71.5 square plus 2, then we do not know the acceleration, therefore we need to get its deceleration to get the time later. Then for the distance traveled, we have 315. Then getting the value of a is negative because it is decelerating. 71.5 squared, put a quantity here, then twice of 350. Therefore the deceleration of the Thunderbird is approximately equal to negative 7.3 meters per second. After getting its deceleration, we can get for the time it took for the Thunderbird to reach this point up to the pit. Therefore, here another kinematic equation, Vf is equal to Vo plus 80, solving for the value of t. Again, the final velocity is equal to 0. Initial velocity is 71.5 minus 7.3, solving for the value of t. T is equal to 71.5 divided to 7.3. Total time for Thunderbird is equal to approximately 9.79 seconds. Let's say this is t sub 1. T sub 1, let's say this is t sub 1, this is t sub 2, and this one will be t sub 3 from this point up to this point. For t sub 2, we know our t sub 2 because the problem gave it, wherein the Thunderbird stopped from the pit for 5 seconds. Now for t sub 3, solving for the t sub 3, again we need to get the acceleration of the Thunderbird from pit, the distance traveled by the Thunderbird again, which is x is equal to 350 or 250 meters, and we know that Since the Thunderbird stop here and accelerate, here the initial velocity will become 0. Say VO is equal to 0, and its velocity after 250 meters is 71.5 meters. Using again our kinematic equation, Vf squared is equal to Vo squared plus 2ax, solving for the acceleration. The velocity after 250 meters is 71.5 square is equal to 0 plus 2a, then x is 250 meters. Then solving for the acceleration, we have 71.5 square all over 2 times 250. Therefore, our acceleration here is approximately equal to 10.22 meter per second squared. This one is second square acceleration. And since we have the acceleration, we can now get for the time it took for the Thunderbird to reach this point. Up to this point, we have t sub 3 using the kinematic equation. Vf is equal to Vo plus at sub 3. We have here 71.5 is equal to 0 plus 10.22 times t sub 3. Solving for t sub 3, this is 71.5 divided by 10.22. The total time is approximately equal to 7 seconds, meaning the total time it took for the Thunderbird to reach this point up to its velocity of 71.5 meter after stopping is we have t sub 1 plus t sub 2 plus t sub 3. The total time is 9.79 plus 5 plus 7 seconds. Its total time is approximately equal to 21.75 or 79 seconds. Now, get the total distance traveled by the Mercedes-Benz. Let's say at Mercedes-Benz, the total distance traveled by Mercedes-Benz at constant velocity, wherein this is, let's say, x for the Mercedes-Benz is equal to the velocity times the time. Therefore, x of the Mercedes-Benz distance traveled by Mercedes-Benz after 21.79 meters from 71.5 times 21.79. The distance traveled by Mercedes-Benz is equal to or approximately equal to 1,558 meters. Now, getting how far or the distance of Mercedes-Benz from the Thunderbird, the x of Mercedes-Benz or Mercedes-Benz is ahead, let's say ahead to the Thunderbird by how many meters? Let's say this one is 1,558 minus the distance traveled by the Mercedes-Benz, which is equal to, or by the Thunderbird, distance traveled by the Thunderbird is equal to 350 up to the pit plus another 250 after reaching 71.5 meter. This one is equal to, or 71.5 meter per second. This one is equal to 600 meters. Therefore, this one is minus 600. Answer here is 958 meters. Okay, this will be our final answer. Traumatic brain injury such as concussion results when the head undergoes a very large acceleration. Generally, an acceleration less than 800 meters per second squared lasting for any length of time will not cause injury, whereas an acceleration greater than 1000 meters per second squared lasting for at least 1 millisecond will cause injury. Suppose a child rolls off a bed that is 0.4 meters above the floor. If the floor is hardwood, the child's head is brought to rest in approximately 2.0 millimeter. calculate the magnitude and duration of the deceleration to determine the risk of injury. Assume the child remains horizontal during the fall to the floor. Note that a more complicated fall could result in a head velocity greater or less than the speed you calculate. Now solving this problem, assuming again there is this hardwood, let's say there is this hardwood, and here there is a bed. This is the level of the bed, and on top of bed there is a child. Let's say this is the child. Okay, the child is, assuming this is a child sleeping. Okay, and he rolled down, or he falls to the hardwood. The height of the bed is from the floor is 0.4 meters or 0.4 meter, and the moment he falls, let's say again this is the floor, another condition wherein the child falls from the floor. Again, this is the child with a height, say this is the child, and the head or the height of his head to the hardwood, let's say another given, we have 2.0 millimeter. Now here we need to find the magnitude and the duration of the deceleration, the time when he falls to the hardwood. Okay, now at the top, let's say the initial velocity again of the child here before falling to the ground. When he moves along y-axis, the initial velocity is equal to 0, and when the child falls from the floor, his velocity here, which is the final velocity, we do not know. Okay, then after falling here, there is again an impact wherein his head might hit the floor. After falling, his body contacted first the floor, then the next is there's this effect wherein his head will also hit the floor. Okay, therefore let's say we need to get again the velocity here, wherein his final velocity here when his head will hit the floor is equal to 0. Okay, now first let's get the condition wherein this child or the child will fall from the floor. Okay, wherein here our initial velocity here is equal to 0, and the distance of the bed or the height of the bed, which is, let's say we'll be using y is equal to 0.4 meters. Okay, now to solve for the velocity when the child falls from the ground, when his body made contact with the floor while his head is still on the air or above the floor, let's say Vf squared using this kinematic equation, Vo squared plus 2gy. Okay, here solving for Vf squared, our initial velocity is equal to 0 plus 2, the gravity we have 9.81, then the height is 0.4, therefore getting the final velocity, squaring both sides the equation, our final velocity here is equal to approximately 2.8 meters per second. And at the hardwood, let's say our 2.8 meters per second will be his initial velocity from this point up to from this point, and his final velocity when his head will hit the ground is equal to 0. Okay, Now getting the acceleration first, or its deceleration for its final velocity, we'll be using again this kinematic equation. Vf squared is equal to Vo squared plus 2gy, wherein our Vf here is the moment where the head of the child will hit the ground, is equal to 0. The initial velocity here will be then the velocity when he falls from the ground at this point, that is 2.8 meters per second, and the height of his head from the ground will be 2 millimeters, or 2 times 10 raised to negative 3 meters. Solving for the value of not g, let's change it. Instead of g, we will be getting the acceleration. We need to get its deceleration, and for this one is equal to 0, is equal to 2.8 squared plus 2. Solving for the value of deceleration, this one is 2 times 10 raised to negative 3. Solving for the value of a, or its deceleration, we have negative 2.8 square over 2 times 10 raised to negative 3. Okay, now solving for the deceleration, this one will be equal to negative 1960 meters per second squared. Okay, this one, the unit of this one is in terms of meter. That is his deceleration. And for the time, solving for the time, since we know the final velocity here is equal to 0, the initial velocity is equal to 2.8 meters per second. Solving for the time using this kinematic equation, we have Vf is equal to Vo plus AT. Our final velocity is 0. The initial velocity is 2.8 minus the acceleration or the deceleration, 1980, or let's say this is positive, then we have t. Solving for the value of t is equal to negative 2.8 all over negative 1980. Our answer here is approximately equal to 1.43 milliseconds.